Hello Commanders and welcome to this video for Infinite Lagrange. We are back in the Pioneers Hub and it's a time of the game I really enjoy. I also got two of these boxes left, so I will open them in the background. Now every time we start newly, it is very interesting because we can start using some ships that are not used in endgame anymore. And this is perfect because I'm getting the Ruby here. It is one of the ships that I am still missing. And I'm very glad about this. So let's get the Ruby first. Because then I can also directly put the tech points into it. And that will be the topic of today's video. We are going to do the frigate tier list. And as said, this is even better because we have the start of the new season. We will use frigates and destroyers for quite some time. And while I'm still a big fan of aircraft fleets, we need to get our base first to level 5 to be able to use aircraft fleets. So we'll have a little bit of time to go through there. Now, let's take a look into the frigates we have and go into our tier lists that we have. Now, important to note, this tier list is endgame based. There will be a few ships that are really good at the beginning, and I will go through all of them. So let's take a look now. First of all, the S category. These are the top of the top. These three ships, you will still use them in late or even in endgame. The Carillion Sea is the best tanking frontline ship available. There's nothing better. It is cheap. It's cheap to build. It only requires 5 command points, and it gets so high evades that it survives surprisingly long. Number 1 tank, even in endgame, if you ask me. Now, the Ruby B is one of the top damage dealers. It is energy based, it requires 5 command points, it does a lot of damage. If you would look at this, in my personal opinion, I like the Xeno Stinger even a little bit more, but as usual, they are all very good. I don't put them in the order how I think they are best. The first one is our tanking ship, then we have 2 damage dealers, Xeno Stinger with the energy UAVs, back row ship, amazing. Focusing on big ships at the beginning, and on the other hand, the Ruby, also energy based, really nice ships. I just got the Ruby A. Unfortunately, you will see the Ruby A, I do not consider it that good. It is still a good ship, but if you have the choice, I would always go for the Xeno Stinger or the Ruby B. And that is how you have to read this tier list. It doesn't mean that the Ruby A is bad. I'm really happy, I'm glad to get it. But I think the B and the A version are just better than, the B and the C version are just better than the A version. And that brings us to the A category. The C version of the Ruby is still really good. It is a defensive version. It does still a lot of damage with pretty decent maximum hits, so we're talking about 180 max damage unskilled, so you can get through some armor there. As said, it is not as good as the B version, but it is still a pretty nice ship. The Reliat C is one of the most interesting frigates we have here. It is a good damage dealing frigate, and it does some nice damage, can hit for up to, let me check my notes, 200 damage per max hit. But the more important thing, the stealth version, the C version, can do system damage, and it does this so amazingly good because it can also crit. And really at sea, you can build special fleets, for example, together with a Maris, Serenitatis A, and then adding certain aircrafts into it that will just shoot through the enemy systems like crazy. So Radiant Sea, pretty powerful, can disable enemy weapon systems, especially if you get it against some bigger ships that might take longer to kill. Very nice. So Ruby C, Rayliat C, both in A tier for me. Xenostinger, Ruby B just do more damage, and you don't see them that often. Honestly, I barely see system damage meta fleets anymore. They are not meta anymore. We are all on aircraft. Before we got into this aircraft mode, before the T800, you saw much more Rayliat C stealth type combined with Mare Sanitatis and like Vitas. So everything that was doing system damage combined to disable the enemy fleets. Like I said, not so much anymore, therefore only A category. B category, these are ships that are pretty decent. Mainly you see them more in early game and later not so much anymore. The Mare Serenitatis is a second frigate, and with the Rayliats, these are the two only frigates that can do system damage. It does much less system damage than the Rayliat because it cannot crit on its system hits. Still good, but just not as good as the Rayliat. The Noma M470B version, our only repair frigate that we have. It can bring in some really nice repair. Great early on in game, great versus pirates, but in end game, in meta game, you will likely not find these repair ships so much anymore. You will probably prefer to take the Xenostinger or the Ruby to fill up the CP and don't use the Noma, because we always have to keep in mind bringing in these ships cost us quite some CP. The Noma requires 6 CP per ship, and it does not heal as much as a Xenostinger would do damage, and therefore in endgame you would prefer to go for the Xeno if you are not going to farm pirates. Farming pirates, repair ships still have their value because you don't want to get repairs, but if it's going into endgame PvP, you don't see them so much anymore. Rayliat B. The Rayliat B version is the torpedo version. It does some good damage. It is energy based damage, but it just cannot keep up with the Xenostinger and the Ruby B. So in endgame you don't see them so much. You usually see I see a lot of rubies. I personally use the Xeno because I didn't have the Ruby, and now I only have the Ruby A. As you can see, the Ruby A is together here for me with the Rayliat. It's doing decent damage, nothing bad. 320 max damage hit. So when we look into which one is better, I would always prefer the Ruby there over the Rayliat B because of the higher damage. Good, decent damage dealer. If you do have the C or if you have the A Xenostinger or the B Ruby, you probably will not bring in the A version. Another thing to mention, the C version of the Ruby also is a frontline ship with some decent armor, 40 armor unskilled. So early in game, this thing is really nice to have it in front row. 40 armor versus beginner ships is very, very strong. Later in game, as usual, it is not so much anymore. It will have problems surviving as soon as we get all the energy based enemies and all the high hitting enemies. But early in game, the Ruby C frontline would be S tier. It just drops down to A for me in later game. And that also brings us to the FG300 B version. It's the armored version front row ship. Early in game, having some of the FG300B version in your front row can be pretty nice. It comes with 15 armor, unskilled, so you can skill it up quite nicely. Very cheap to build, very quick. If you have the Ruby C, I would definitely take the Ruby C over the FG300, but if you don't have anything, the FG300B version is still nice to have in front row to protect your other ships in the back rows. Same thing if you don't have the Carillion C, which is the best tank available. Ruby C can bring in some nice armor. The Carillion is doing the evade. If you don't have any of these two, you at least can use the FG300B early in game to have a little bit of survivability in your fleet. Why do I have the FG300C in here? because it is the best recon frigate, or the best recon ship overall, in my opinion. There are other ships that are also very quick, but the FG300 is crazy cheap. It is so cheap to build, it is fast to build, and it only requires 3 command points. So if you take a different kind of recon ship, like the Carillion A, for example, it's also, where do we have it? Carillion A, here. This one, it's also a recon ship, but it requires 4 CP, and for this I would always go with the FG300, saving resources and saving command points, therefore in C category. And the last ship in the C category, the Carillion B. Carillion B, what can I say about it? It is also a recon ship. It does, the Carillion B. I already mixed it up. Sorry. The Carillion B is a heavy cannon version. It does nice heavy hits. It can hit for up to 300 max damage. The anti-ship total damage is not so good, but it does have a skill to increase the damage by plus 60% attack versus cruiser. We know that skill from our Callisto, and this can be pretty nice. Now, it just doesn't do enough damage to be used in endgame or anything really much, so that's where this stops, and that's also why it's only C category. I was thinking maybe even putting it in D, but it is better than the other D category, if you ask me. Now, the D category, these are ships you usually do not use. There's no real reason why you would build these ships. At least for me, I didn't build them for a very, very long time. FG300A is a standard version. You got them when you start, and you should leave it by the ones you have from the start on. After this, better if you have, build some of the S tier or A tier ships. Carillion A is, it's just, yeah, the recon version. It doesn't do much damage. It is as fast as the FG300. It needs more resources to build, more command points to maintain, so no real reason. Marinubium A and B, I'm not a big fan of these. They can't do anything right, so nothing to get from them. Mare Serenitatis B and C version. Anti-aircraft does not really work well. That's still the problem also for the Marinubium. I did try them at the beginning, all these anti-aircraft ships, I did try them. Also the Xeno Stinger B version. When I got it, I was so excited because it got anti-aircraft UAVs, but it just didn't do anything. So I don't build them anymore, I don't use them anymore. Mare Tranquillitatis A, B, C, all 3 of them, the anti-aircraft, the integrated, and even the pulse cannon version, the B version, has energy damage. But the damage is so damn low. Don't build them. It's, I tried it, I was excited, I thought, oh great, another energy type frigate. It does not really cut it. It does not do enough damage. Noma M470 A and C versions. Again, we got an anti-aircraft in the C version. The Noma A is a siege type. I know I will get a few comments there. Oh, the Noma A, great siege damage. Yes, and I never really used it. Yes, you can build it, but it's not good for PvE, it's not good for PvP, it is only there to give you a little bit more damage when taking cities, and it does not really have any other value than that. So you can build them if you want to see your name, but in the top siege damage list, but in my opinion, the resources to build it just do not really make sense. They are better spent elsewhere, in ships that you can use everywhere else. Get something from the S, A or B category, much better in my opinion than the Noma A version. Rayliat A anti-ship does do some decent anti-ship damage, but the max damage is very low. It is 35 damage unskilled, so you can skill it up. The problem with this is it's getting cut down so dramatically by any armor in the enemy fleet. So if the enemy fleet has anything with armor, the damage from the Rayliat A is dropping dramatically. That's why I don't build it anymore. Early in game it can be good, but same thing. Get a Xenostinger, a Ruby, the Rayliat C, anything from the category up here will do very well, and you can still use it later in game. So that's why I got it down here. I don't build it anymore because of the low max damage. Xenostinger B, as said, if anti-aircraft would work, the Xenostinger B would be amazing. It got 4 anti-aircraft UAVs. It's something we all wish for, we all looking for. It would be amazing, but unfortunately it does not. So that's my tier list on that, my thoughts on all the frigates we have. Now with the start of the game, what am I going to build? Let's take a look at the ships I have. Sure, I will try to get as quick as possible to enable my aircraft. I'm not really so excited about getting the destroyers or cruisers. I'm excited about getting aircraft. Till then, I will try to only build the ships necessary, depending if I'm under pressure. I will build more, if not, I will build less, to use my resources to build up my base faster. So for sure I will use the Xenostinger. You can see here I already got 60 tech points in that thing. It is amazing. It does a lot of damage, skilled later. I think it's 14k if I remember it right. It is just crazy high damage, energy based. The ship itself is in the back row. I love it. There's nothing to not laugh about it. Now I got the Ruby. Also doing decent damage. As I don't have the tech points in it yet, I will not use it. I will focus on the Xenostinger. Together with this, the Carillion special type for the high evade. Getting 3-4 Carillions in the front line. You still have the FG300 from the beginning. Adding the Xenostingers, and you are golden. This will be my setup to start the new season. From the frigate perspective, and from there on, sure, we are going to build up our way to be able to get our aircraft as fast as possible, because that is still the meta of the game. There's not much you can do against it. So I'm very curious to see the comments you have about the frigate tier list. I hope you like my input on this, and my thought process is well explained. Now, as always, let me know in the comments what you think. Give the video thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.